Let's go. Favorite spread for Sunday, Matt?
My favorite here is a team that's really been struggling lately, but they're playing against another team who's similarly struggling, and I don't think people are really realizing it, and that's the Giants against the Carolina Panthers. So, first of all, this line's 2.5. I think at a certain point it's going to get back up to 3, which is obviously a key number. We saw a game end by exactly 3 in the Browns-Broncos game last night. But that being said, even with the Giants' issues at receiver, I just don't think the Panthers are a good team. And this is probably a much more evenly matched game than most people realize. The Panthers have had 3 straight close losses, but if you really dig into the numbers, the games weren't that close. They lost by 8 against the Cowboys, but they basically got there in garbage time and were down 3 scores late in the game and just, backdoored their way into a close game. They lost to the Eagles and they lost to the Vikings, and those were both games where they were outgained in terms of yards per play and many other efficiency metrics by a significant amount, and just the scores ended up being close. I think they had a blocked punt for a touchdown against Minnesota. So I just don't think the Panthers are a team that's playing well. I think they are kind of just on the Giants level, but for whatever reason, the Giants are getting points at home. So I do think there's a good chance the Giants cover, especially if you can get that lineup to 3.
Pearce, what do you think, dude? Favorite spread?
I like the Falcons -2.5. I know Matt's a little bit worried about this game, but I'm not at all. I think the Dolphins have all kinds of problems. You've got the Tua trade rumors. I don't think that's good for the team whatsoever. I know that the trio of Tua, Gesicki, and Waddle are going to get better, but as good as that trio could be or is, it didn't really help them when they lost to Jacksonville. So I like what Atlanta's doing. I think people saw that first week of Atlanta and they really haven't forgotten it, even though we know that in the preseason the starters didn't play together. And so they came out and really disappointed people. But since week 1, this offense has gotten better every single week. And I think they're not going to have any problem here playing a Miami defense that's not very good whatsoever. I'm not expecting huge things from Atlanta, but they should be able to beat this Dolphins team that's struggling much more than the Falcons.
Well, Pearce, what about your favorite money line bet? You need to tell us, please.
I like the Bengals. I mean, this feels a lot like the Bengals money line bet against Pittsburgh a couple weeks ago. The Bengals don't go to Pittsburgh and win. Well, they did. The Bengals don't go to Baltimore and win. This is a different Bengals team. They've got a really solid defense that seems to be improving. They don't have any big names, so no one really is supporting them, but all around, the defense is playing pretty well. We know what they got with Burrow. We know what they got with Jamar Chase. And people are going to say, well, they're just hitting these big plays and they're not very consistent. Well, that's exactly the same thing as the Ravens. If you look at the Ravens offense, they hit some big plays. Lamar Jackson's going deep and nailing passes. So if you don't believe in the Bengals offense or can't trust them, then you can't really believe or trust in the Ravens offense. And on paper, or at least in reality, I guess, the defenses looked pretty even in this matchup. And I think also this line is an overreaction to last week. Yes, the Ravens beat the Chargers handedly, but we know that the Chargers are mercurial and they can look really good at times and really bad at times. What if the Ravens win over the Chargers last week was just simply a game where the Chargers had an off day? So I will take the Bengals in the money line.
All right, Matt, which money line bet do you like?
So I'm glad Pearce brought up this game again because I'm going with the Dolphins at +115. And it should speak to my level of concern that I don't really like the spread here. I'd rather just take what I think is a coin flip at +115. Because if the Falcons do win this game by 3 touchdowns, I won't be shocked. I do think there's a chance the Dolphins issues they're dealing with lately, especially a quarterback, locker room issues, whatever's going on, like that could be a real thing and they might get crushed here. But the Falcons are also, like, they are dead last in the NFL in DVOA this season to this point. Like, they've been the worst team so far, at least by Football Outsiders metrics. Their win that they just had was against the Jets. And other than that, they've played really poorly this season. They've had an easy schedule, and basically the only difficult game they had was in Tampa Bay, and they lost by 23 points in that one. Their other games came against Washington, Giants, and Eagles. So between like that and the Jets, I mean, they really haven't faced anyone besides Tampa. Their one true test, and they got blown out in that game. I guess what's being priced into this line is that the Falcons are coming off a bye. They had the London game 2 weeks ago. The Dolphins just played in London, so the rest factor could be why this line is different than what I think it should be. So again, like, this is a game that could go any number of ways. I think weather could be a concern here, but to me, it just comes down to the Falcons are bad and the Dolphins are also bad. And I think this really is a coin flip game. So getting plus 115 just seems like a value to me.
How about your favorite Sunday total, Matt?
So this one will hurt me if I'm right for DFS, because this is going to be a game that many people are interested in, and that's the Eagles and the Raiders. I think for DFS, the game is probably underpriced, but I do think it should be a high-scoring game. We're looking at 48.5 right now, and the Eagles quietly are playing with as fast of a pace as any team in the NFL, and I think it probably will be more obvious that they don't run very much. And when they do run, it's Jalen Hurts. Like they're not playing a traditional running game. So I think their up-tempo style paired with the Raiders, who I think also are kind of an up-tempo team, that just has happened to have leads recently where they haven't needed to air the ball out. They played from ahead against Denver, where that was a game where probably most people expected them to be trailing, but in the second half they just didn't have to throw that much because they surprisingly were up by so much in the game. But if we see a closer game here, I think it should be a back and forth matchup, and the total should be into the 50s. I'm not really sure why it's only at 48.5. I think both these teams are going to throw a lot.
Okay, Pearce, how about you, dude?
Finally, Matt and I agree on something. I am also going to go with the over in the Philadelphia-Las Vegas game. Las Vegas, going back to last season, 16-6 in terms of going over their total. The defense, maybe it's improved, but either way, they've let this team down. And it turns into shootouts. And the Las Vegas offense has been great. Derek Carr is looking good. He's got all kinds of weapons. They seem to be improving every single week. Ruggs looks good. You know what you're getting out of Waller. You know what you're getting out of Jacobs. And on the other side, we've seen really good second halves from the Philadelphia Eagles. We've seen Jalen Hurts turn it on. If he could just play well to start the game, or just be average to start the game, or maybe not be as conservative, be a little bit more aggressive, and they might have to be in a game where you're going to have to play catch-up possibly, or outrace this high-powered offense in the Raiders. I see points coming. And even if it is just the second half, the Las Vegas defense should allow Hurts to pile up the points in the second half and get over this total.
Pearce, hook me up with your favorite player prop on the Sunday slate.
James Conner over 53.5 yards. We talked about this earlier in the week. And this is another one of these games with a huge 17-point spread. I just don't think the sportsbook's going to be that far off. So if the case is Arizona is absolutely way on top of Houston, then they're going to run the ball in the second half. And the running back that they give to most of their carries to on the ground is James Conner. This number is just way too low, especially when you factor in Houston's Texans rush defense was terrible last year. They're terrible this year. They got throttled last week by Jonathan Taylor. 53.5. I mean, he might go over that in the first half of this game.
Matt, favorite player prop is what?
So I'm going with a very similar bet. My rushing prop over is at 52.5. And I already mentioned the Giants. I think they can keep this game close against the Panthers. And I think that bodes well for Devontae Booker and hitting his rushing prop over. So basically what's happened the last 2 weeks with Booker starting is the Giants have been down by 2, 3, and even 4 touchdowns in their games. They've had to entirely abandon the running game. And Booker still managed 40 or so yards in both of those. I think this is a game where the Giants could potentially have the lead against the Panthers, but at the very least, they should keep it close. And if this game is close, I think this line is 10 or 20 yards too low.
All right, guys, we had a couple minutes left here in the show. So which game is your least favorite this week? Which game are you just not going to touch? You want nothing to do with, Matt?
So it's not a game that I think will be bad necessarily, but in the Packers game against the Washington football team, the line opened at 10.5, and we already have it down to 7.5. There's something going on there. Like, I'm not really sure why the line has moved so much. It made sense to me that 10.5 was too high. I thought like 9 or maybe 8.5 was somewhere like the right line, but now it's down to 7.5. And I just think at this point, just let this one go. Like, I think there will be people looking at this like, well, 7.5 is still good. Like, if Washington loses by a touchdown, I still cover, right? But you've missed a lot of the line movement already. I just don't think that it's worth getting into this one now. I do think there's a chance that this is a good football game. I don't think Washington is that bad of a team. It's just, I don't know what to make of this one, so I'm just staying away from it from a betting perspective.
All right, Pearce, bring us home. Which one are you staying away from a betting perspective?
From a betting perspective and not a DFS perspective, but Tennessee and Kansas City, I don't know what to make of this game. You've got defenses that struggle, which really opens the door to either offense to pour on the points. And last week, Tennessee absolutely shocked and surprised me by beating Buffalo. I know it's close. Buffalo probably was inches away from winning that game. Nonetheless, that game was a lot closer than I expected it, and I didn't think that Derrick Henry could simply carry this team to victory. And if he could do it last week, then why can't he do it again against Kansas City? Why can't he do it at least to cover the spread? But I don't know. If Mahomes comes out and doesn't throw a bunch of interceptions, then it's very likely that Kansas City gets up by a couple touchdowns early. Tennessee has to start passing the ball. They abandon the run. They fall even further behind. We've seen that, or we saw that earlier this season when Tennessee got destroyed by Arizona. I don't know how this is going to play out. I'm sure a lot of it's going to come down to Derrick Henry. If he gets 40 carries again, then maybe they win. I'm staying away. DFS, it's great.
Yeah.
Sportsbook wise, I don't know who wins or who covers this game.